Hey y'all, I'm Elisa and I am the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have an art journal process video for you. I'm going to be trying another vertical layout in my art journal. I really enjoyed that last time, so I'm going to give it another go. I picked up this stencil recently from Stencil Girl Products. Love the intricacy of this beautiful stencil. I haven't gotten to use it yet, so I'm excited to see how it goes. And I'm going to be using these Jane Davenport acrylic paints. I'm loving the fall tones here. And these Jane Davenport paints work fantastic when you are art journaling because they dry matte, except for these couple of shimmer ones or metallic ones. And they're great for writing over and adding on top of. So excited to use those. I will put you on fast forward and we'll see what happens. Let's go. Let me start off by being totally transparent. When I recorded this art journal video, I forgot to press record. So the whole background there, I actually painted with some of that light cream colored Jane Davenport acrylic paint, and then I added some swooshes of the metallic white. It has kind of a silver, but it's a bit iridescent. It wasn't totally opaque, and I covered the entire back with it, and then you can see me drying it here. This art journal page was super therapeutic for me. I was recording it in the midst of just some crazy anxiety things I had going on and some stress that was going on in my life, and it felt really difficult to sit down and start this page. I knew I needed to do it. I knew I wanted to record it, but it felt difficult to start. So I think it's actually interesting that I didn't press record right at the beginning. But by the end, when I was done with the page, it was just an amazing reminder to me how taking time to be creative can be so therapeutic. It got me out of my own head and it got me focused on something else, and everything just felt a little brighter when I was done. So again, this is just the background of the page, making sure it's thoroughly dry before I add the stencil on the top. So my go-to product now for stenciling is this pixie spray. It is amazing. I will link it below from scrapbook.com. It's fantastic. You spray it on the back of your stencil, let it dry for about a minute, and then stick it down onto the surface. It keeps it in place, kind of creates a nice seal so you get a cleaner stencil imprint. It doesn't leave any sticky residue on the surface of your project, and after you wash your stencils when the project is over, it doesn't leave any stickiness on the actual stencil either, which is fantastic, and I have used it on every stencil project since I purchased it. Over to my right, you will see a hard-boiled egg holder or a deviled egg holder that I use to hold my paints, and I'm just squirting out some of this different Jane Davenport acrylic paint. Again, I really like this for art journaling because it is not sticky when it is dry, which is great for when the pages close. I'm using a sponge brush to kind of plop this on. One tip I would have for you is make sure you don't get too much paint on your brush. You want it to kind of be dry, so I'm dabbing it off on the side each time. If it has too much paint, it will start to seep under your stencil and you won't get a very clean image once you pull it up. The other tip I have, you can see I'm starting with the darkest color, dark brown, and I'm going to go darkest to lightest, and that way I'm able to blend it a little bit easier. You'll see me kind of mixing different places and different colors at different times, and once I go from darkest to lightest, I don't really have to change my brush, if that makes sense. I don't have to clean it off because I'm just starting to mix the colors, and it really mixes pretty nicely that way. So moving on to this deep maroon, once I put the maroon down, it kind of ends up being brighter than I anticipated, so I did like mixing it in closer to the brown down here to kind of darken it up, and you'll see I kind of mixed some brown up on the top as well to bring down that maroon color. It turned out to be a little bit pink up top, and I wanted to tone that down just a bit. The other tip I have when painting over stencils is using this dabbing motion. Going straight over the top, dabbing straight down, keeps it from brushing underneath the edges. This is a very intricate stencil. It is laser cut and there are lots of tiny little pieces, and if I were to brush back and forth, those would come up pretty easily and paint would get underneath. So staying right on top of it, going up and down in that motion, really helps keep the paint exactly where I place it. You see me kind of blending out. I've moved on to the coppery tone right here. This is an interesting blend of paints because the copper and the gold are both metallic and the two browns and the maroon are not. They are flat. So it makes kind of a cool, subtle effect when you're mixing the two on your art journal project, which I like. I really like that texture and kind of the difference it creates between those two sheens, and I think it looks really nice in the end. I ended up being very pleased with the blend that I got with these acrylic paints when I did not change brushes or when I didn't wash off that brush, which normally for acrylic paints, I'm not great at blending them. I'm a little bit better with watercolor, but I knew watercolor wasn't going to quite work on this project. So using it in this way really helped me mix these colors nicely, and I really appreciate the little tidbits of the different colors that end up. It just created a nice textured look. I'm going to finish out these areas right here with the gold, and then I will lift up the stencil, and I was very pleased with the impression that was left. It wasn't completely clean, but very few stencils can be, and of course I'm not going for perfection. This is an art journal and I am just enjoying getting my feelings out and just working through this page. So here it goes, stencil up before it's completely dry. Ta-da! This turned out to be a lot of acrylic paint. It was built up pretty well on top of this page, so I really had to dry it really nicely, and I even walked away for a little bit just to let it really set before I continued on, because I knew I wanted to layer on top of it. So as you're working with your art journaling projects, it can be hard, but make sure you are patient and let things dry. Some art journalers really like having two art journals going at once so that when they're in the flow and one needs to dry, they can put it to the side and pick up the other one and just keep going. I decided that what I really wanted to do was add a girl on this page, and I'm gonna pick this Jane Davenport stencil. I believe it came as part of her acrylic paint packs. One of them came with this stencil, and I'm going to very carefully paint it in with some black acrylic paint that I got from Target. It's part of the Handmade Modern collection. I'm using a smaller brush, and the reason I'm using acrylic paint is I do have a black paint pen that might have worked, but it did not have a fine enough tip to get into some of the crevices here, and I thought I would do pretty well with the black paint, and I did. Again, I had trouble. You don't want to brush on paint over a stencil because that's how it really starts to ooze underneath. So you can see me kind of working over the top. My brush is almost straight up and down. I'm just being really careful not to overdo it on the black. I did one thin layer and then come back and do another one because I wanted a crisp line. I was also able to come in after I picked up the stencil and kind of clean up the lines a little bit with my black paint pen. And again, not going for perfection. When you are working in an art journal, that is the most freeing part about it for me, is that it's really just letting go, just letting the art kind of come off the page on its own. And I don't worry too much about messiness. In fact, I kind of enjoy that look. So that's what I go for. You can see me kind of going over a few lines right here to darken them up. And once I wrap that up, then I will be able to pick up that stencil and see the start of my beautiful girl in the corner. Again, I want to make sure that it's nice and dry before I add anything else on the top of it. And I have to walk away, dry it a little bit, and then come back for my next layering. Now, I told you I was a little bit scattered when I did this art journal page, and I forgot to turn on my camera for when I was sketching in those hairs, or that hair that you see. And so I added those kind of hairlines with the black acrylic paint, and now I'm coming back in with the dark brown and filling it in. I like using brown for a lot of my ladies. I have brown hair, and so I like adding it in, and I'm going to add some shading of copper into that as well, just for some fun highlights. I love that this girl is all about fall. She's fall toned, has all the fall in her hair, and coming back with the highlights really helps give her hair a little bit more definition and flow, I guess. One tip for filling in hair that I actually heard from one of Jane Davenport's YouTube videos is that you want to make sure that as you're drawing these hairlines that you actually start from the hairline. So you start close to the head and kind of brush out from there, and that gives it a more natural look. You never want to work backwards starting from the end of the hair up, because that's not the natural way that hair would grow, and you want it to have that natural sweeping look. I really like that the hair ended up being completely filled in. It really sets off the face, even though the face has the same stenciling and coloring as the background. It sets it off. I'm filling in her lips with that deep magenta color to pick it up from the top right corner, and I'm really pleased with how her face is really popping off of the page for me. The next thing I'm going to do is come back with this white. Again, it's not completely opaque. It has kind of an iridescence to it. I'm adding just a little sparkle to her eyes to give them a little bit of life. And I'm going to very carefully come through and fill in the word bloom that's hidden up in that stenciling up there. It wasn't the cleanest stencil line right up there, so I'm going to come in with a smaller brush and I'm filling in the lines of the word bloom, and then I will set it off again with another paint pen. I really like the brightness that this white iridescent paint has brought to the page, so I decide what I really want to do is add a few splatters. I definitely love art splatters all the time, so I'll add a little bit of water to the white paint that I already have in my tray, mix it up, and then add just a few splatters all the way around the page to bring in that iridescent feel in the other areas that don't have stenciling. The next technique that I'm going to use, I just call the scribble technique. I'm sure there is a better term for it, but I'm coming in with my Micron .02 pen, and I am literally just scribbling an outline on some of these flowers. Actually, it's a little bit inset from the flower, and that really highlights the abstract feel of the stencil along with kind of the messy feel of the background of this page, which I am super enjoying. And now that I'm seeing my page, I really feel like I need to name this girl. She needs a name. She's got a personality. She's kind of introspective, I feel like. So let me know if you have an idea for a name for her. I would lean towards like Charlotte, maybe. I don't know. Victoria, that might be a good one too. So let me know if you have an idea for what I should name this girl, and if you name the people that you put on your art journal pages. Here I'm adding a little bit of shadowing with my paint pen, my black paint pen, adding it to bloom to let it stand out even more. And this page is almost done. I end up adding some Tim Holtz phrase stickers like I do. They say, fall in love with as many things as possible just because, which I happen to think is a great way to live your life and just a great way to look at the world. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please consider giving it a thumbs up, as well as hitting that subscribe button and that bell notification button. I hope you have a fantastic day, that you find a little time to get into your art journal, to change your mood, to connect with your creativity. As always, keep it creative.